Hello everybody, this is the Hungry House Husband, and today I'm showing you how to make white bread. The ingredients we'll need are 2.5 cups of warm water, 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 6 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 1/4 cup of butter softened. We'll start off with our bowl with 1/2 cup of the warm water in it. You want it to be comfortable bath water temperature. You don't want it boiling, you don't want to kill our poor yeast, but you want it warmer than lukewarm. So after you check it, go ahead and pour your sugar in, and then you're going to want to whisk that sugar. I whisk after every step. You want to make sure the sugar is nice and dissolved before we put in our yeast, because that's what's going to feed our yeast. So we go ahead and sprinkle the yeast on. Now don't whisk the yeast. Some people say it's okay to do, and it is, but I find that it works better if it's just sitting on top of the water, and you'll see why. And once you have all your yeast in the bowl, go ahead, take a nice clean tea cloth, a tea towel, and cover it on up, and we want to let it sit there for 5 or so minutes. Now that our 5 minutes is up, we're going to go ahead and take the tea towel off. You're going to see the yeast has become foamy. It's going to smell like beer almost. And the reason I don't whisk it in is because you don't get this reaction. You get a stranger, cloudier water. It doesn't foam like this, and it just, I find it doesn't rise as well. It may just be my imagination, but that's the way I was always taught to do it. And at this point, we'll go ahead and add our flour, or start to anyway. Go 1 cup at a time. I usually start off 1/2 cup at a time. Whisk it until it's nice and incorporated, then add the next 1/2 cup or cup, depending on which way you want to do it, and just go like that. It's going to become kind of pancake batter consistency, and at this point, if you wanted to add anything into it, such as herb seasonings, then you would go ahead and do that now. And once you've added about 3 or 4 cups of flour, you're going to see that the dough is now really thick, and it's kind of a pain to keep whisking. The whisk just doesn't have that kind of power to it. So we're going to go ahead, take the whisk out, shake it off, save as much as you can into the bowl, and we're going to replace it with a spoon. Now, wood is preferable, but I don't have any wood spoons, just plastic, but that's okay. And at this point, we'll add in our salt and our butter. Just kind of sprinkle it in. I don't like adding the salt in immediately because salt kills yeast. And so you kind of need the buffer there of the flour and the butter to kind of keep them from, keep the salt from just absolutely decimating the yeast, which will keep it from rising. At this point, all we're really doing is adding flour, stir it really well, add more flour, stir it very well, until you eventually will come up with a very shaggy dough. It's going to start sticking to the spoon and become kind of a mass instead of a batter. So at this point, I usually just give up on the spoon. It's not effective anymore. So we're going to go ahead and clean it off and resort to using our hands. You're still adding flour because it is a little wet, but it's going to be easier to just get your hands in. You can see it's still sticky. It's going to want to come with your hand. It's kind of halfway in between like cake batter and solid dough. So you want to just keep adding in the flour, keep turning it in the bowl. be sure to cover any of the sticky spots with flour to take away that, but you want tacky. You want tacky but not clean to your fingers. So once you get the dough to where it doesn't feel as liquidy, you can go ahead at that point, take some flour, clean your fingers off best you can, and we're going to move the bowl out of the way and flour down our work surface. This way, the bread won't stick to your counter or whatever it is that you are going to need it on. And we'll just go ahead, grab a little extra flour on the side because you will need it. Just kind of drop, scrape the bowl because there will be little pieces of dough stuck to the bottom. It happens every time. And then just start to knead it. Now the best way to knead, or the way that I was always taught anyway, was push down with the heel of your hand, add some flour anytime you feel a sticky spot, and then just push down with the heel, back with the fingers, and you're going to run into a lot of stickiness. Now, remember, you want tacky, you don't want sticky. So anytime you find a sticky spot, just add a little flour, not much. I know it looks like I'm adding a lot, but I'm really not, because this is still decently wet at this point. But you just put it in, roll, pull back with your fingers, and when it becomes this long loaf-looking thing, I usually fold it in half and then go again. So it's just a repetition thing. Repetition. You're going to do this for probably 10 minutes, give or take. So it's going to be a workout for your fingers. If you have carpal tunnel or anything like this will be murder. Arthritis this is a killer every time. You could ask my grandmother if she was still around. She's the one that taught me how to do this. So once you get the dough to where it is smooth, but it's en masse, notice there's not really anything sticking to my fingers at this point. If you find any of those spots, add flour. So once you get done with this, we're going to go ahead and roll it into a ball, or your approximation of a ball, and just go ahead and put it right back into that ball. We're also going to be sure to cover it back up with that trusty old tea towel, and we're going to let it sit and rest for about an hour in a nice warm spot, preferably on top of the oven or someplace, whatever's warm for you. So here we are after an hour. Let this actually go about an hour and 15 minutes. And you can see that is nice and risen and puffy. Go ahead and punch it down. This is like the best part of this. Go ahead and knock it down, dump it from the bowl onto your flour surface so it doesn't stick or anything. And then we're going to go ahead and divide it into two. Now you should also have 2 loaf pans, nice and buttered or greased, however you feel like doing that. And then you're going to want your oven preheating to 375 Fahrenheit, just to make sure that everything is ready and you don't have to wait too long. Now, you will have to let this rise again here in a moment, but it's a lot shorter proof, second proof, so it should be all right. Now go ahead, stretch this out to about the size of a piece of legal paper or writing paper, about 9 by 11, give or take. And we're going to, once we get it to that shape, we're going to fold it like we would a letter into thirds. So just go ahead, peel it off and roll it up, and then smush it down a little bit. Just get all that air out of it, or as much as you can. You don't want big holes in your bread. And you can see I could have put down a little more flour there, but once it's all together, tuck the ends under on the sides and make sure the seam is down. We're going to go ahead and place that into our greased loaf pan. And then we're of course going to also cover it with that trusty old tea towel again. And we're going to let it sit this time for about 30 minutes. I have a slow oven and it takes about 30 minutes for it to hit 375 anyway, so all the better. Alright, so it's been about 30 minutes. It's been sitting on the warming oven here. And so we're going to go ahead and lift the tea towel, and you can see how it's proofed for that second time. You want to let it get high over the edges. You want it to push that tea towel up so that you know that's, your bread is going to be a decent shape. Go ahead, slit the top. This is more to make it pretty. I usually put butter in there at the end. It kind of keeps it nice and moist. So at that time, go ahead and put it into your oven on the middle rack, and we're going to let it go for about 30 minutes. Here we are 30 minutes later, nice and fresh right out of the oven. Go ahead, turn it out onto your cooling rack as soon as you can. And this is the sound that you want it to make when you thump the bottom. That sound, that hollow sound, is exactly what you want. And basically, so all that's left to do, rub the top down with a stick of butter. You're not going to use the entire stick, but just enough to make sure everything gets nice and coated with a little bit of buttery goodness. This is for flavor, and it also keeps the top crust soft and pliable, so that it tends not to crack and just get all hard and nasty. And I guarantee you, this is a bread where you will not want to cut the crust off because it tastes so good. But that's basically it. At this point, there's really nothing left to do but to cover it with your trusty tea towel and let it cool. And when you're done, go ahead, give it a slice. I think you'll find that the inside's nice and chewy, just as a good white bread should be. So until next time, may your food and your life always have flavor. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oops.